Hi, Jakey Stief here, the long-haired freaky dude, and today I'm going to review the classic Greek tragedy, Oedipus the King. And if you like patricide and incest, then this is the book for you. This copy is translated into English prose by Richard C. Jebb, and when it comes to translations, I find prose to be the best. I just don't think that a translation successfully preserves the beauty of verse without utterly destroying the author's original meaning. Of course, the best route to go is to actually read it in its original language. But if that were the case, then there'd be a bunch of polyglots running around. And who wants that? Verse translations. They're still beautiful, but I often find their meaning to be hollow. They're great if they're to be a part of a recited play, if it's to be actually performed. But if you're reading it and trying to gather meaning from it, then I suggest going with the prose translation. So, this translation by Richard C. Jebb. It's prose, it's meaningful, it's fabulous. Oedipus the King. Oedipus Tyrannus. Oedipus Rex. He goes by many names. He's the king of Thebes. That is the Greek Thebes, not the Egyptian Thebes. And he's the protagonist of this here tragedy. And yes, since it is so titled a tragedy, the ending is by its very nature tragic. Not a spoiler, this is a Greek play, what do you expect? The chorus tells you essentially the outcome of everything at the very beginning. And as such, the suspense and drive to read comes not from the development of plot, but rather from the development of character. One must keep in mind that the story would have been known by everyone at the time it was written. So Sophocles' goal was not to captivate the audience through suspense, but rather other means. Nonetheless, I will keep spoilers to a minimum. What I reveal will be details given only in the very beginning anyways. So, that aside, I wasn't too surprised by what happened in this play. If you've read Seven Against Thebes by Sophocles' fellow playwright, Aeschylus, then you pretty much know exactly what's going to go down. Oedipus the King is like the backstory, the prelude to Seven Against Thebes. It's what leads up to causing Seven Against Thebes. The story itself is incredibly fascinating and morbidly ironic. Even if you know what happens, you might not know exactly just how it happened. And that is just as fun and puts the ironic in morbidly ironic. It starts out with the king seeking insight from a prophet to help with a plague. Learning that the plague is a result of the former king Elias's murderer never being caught, Oedipus thus seeks guidance from a soothsayer to track this murderer down. Track down this murderer, he must be found! No, that wasn't a Phantom of the Opera reference, I swear. Anyway, from there we see more development, and then are taken back in time to learn about the king's past, where much of the story takes place. There were some scenes in here which I found absolutely amusing. Not only did Oedipus go down to the crossroads before Robert Johnson, but we get to witness perhaps history's first case of road rage. You know how you always see on people's dash cams arrogant, egotistical car drivers driving others off the road so they could get home just before their milk spoils. And then the guy that got pushed off the road aggressively pursues the pusher. Well, that happens here. Except it's with horses, and it's absolutely hilarious. Never did I think I'd laugh reading a Greek play, a tragedy at that, but I did. It's like a video game should be made from this stuff. Grand Theft Carriage, Thebes, Greece. That would be a good game. And if you just can't get enough of Oedipus, fortunately for you, it's the first in an epic trilogy of 3. Trilogy of 3, that smells redundant, but whatever. Oedipus at Colonus comes after this. Though technically, even though it is traditionally published as a trilogy, it is actually no such thing. Oedipus the King, Oedipus at Colonus, and Antigone were all written years apart for separate festivals and thus contain some inconsistencies. They were never meant to be a trilogy and as such can be read apart from each other, but they do have a nice flow even though that's not how they're meant to be. So don't be turned off by the fact that they weren't meant to be a trilogy. We still read them as such today. Alright, well that is my review of Oedipus the King by Sophocles, translated into English prose by Richard C. Jebb, It's beautifully sadistic. If you're a Stephen King or Thomas Harris fan, great gateway into Greek literature. Not to mention, it's almost satirical, so you just might get a few laughs out of this one. Now, I'll go ahead and read a few lines for you so you can square out how this translation is. Prose by Richard C. Jebb. Oedipus the King. Oedipus, my children, latest born to Cadmus, who was of old, why are ye set before me thus with wreathed branches of suppliance, while the city reeks with incense, rings with prayers for health and cries of woe? I deemed it unmeet, my children, to hear these things at the mouth of others, and have come hither myself, I, Oedipus, renowned of all. Tell me then, thou vulnerable man, since it is thy natural part to speak for these, in what mood are ye placed here, in what dread or what desire? Be sure that I would gladly give all aid, hard of heart were I, did I not pity such suppliants as these. Priest of Zeus. Nay, Oedipus, ruler of my land, thou seest of what years we are who beset thy altars. Some, nestling too still tender for far flights, some bowed with age, priests, as I of Zeus, and these, the chosen youth, while the rest of the folk sit with wreathed branches in the marketplaces, and before the two shrines of Pallas, and where Ismenus gives answer by fire. For the city, as thou thyself seest, is now too sorely vexed, and can no more lift her head from beneath the angry waves of death. A blight is on her in fruitful blossoms of the land, and the herds among the pastures, and the barren pangs of women. And withal the flaming god, the malign plague hath swooped on us, and ravages the town by whom the house of Cadmus is made waste, but dark Hades rich in groans and tears. Alrighty. So that is Richard C. Jebb's translation. I do hope you read this play. It is very fantastic. I'm Jake Stief. Have a great day.